दिन से चल रही सैन्य कार्रवाई को रोकने का समझौता आज शाम को हुआ था। पिछले कुछ घंटों से इस समझौते का पाकिस्तान की ओर से घोर उल्लंघन हो रहा है। भारतीय सेना जवाबी कार्रवाई कर रही है और इस सीमा अतिक्रमण से निपट रही है। ये अतिक्रमण अत्यंत ही निंदनीय है और पाकिस्तान इनके लिए जिम्मेदार है। हमारा मानना है कि पाकिस्तान इस स्थिति को ठीक से समझे और इस अतिक्रमण को रोकने के लिए तुरंत उचित कार्रवाई करे। सेना ने इस स्थिति पर कड़ी नज़र रखी हुई है और उसे किसी भी अतिक्रमण से निपटने के लिए ठोस और सख्त कदम उठाने के लिए आदेश दे दिए गए हैं। गुड इवनिंग। For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control. Thank you.
I have a very short, brief statement by Vikram Misri, making it very clear that Pakistan has violated the ceasefire, but making it also clear that they expect Pakistan to fall in line, else India will respond appropriately. So I think there is that concern with Pakistan, and that's the point I was making, Gaurav, before we went into that presser, that with Pakistan, you never know what happens next. You can't trust your neighbor, but you have to deal with your neighbor. We cannot change, Gaurav, the geography of the subcontinent.
But we're dealing with that neighbor so beautifully. You're pounding him when you have to. You're holding that water for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We love the people of Jammu and Kashmir more than Pakistan.
I want to see how this Indus Water Treaty abeyance works. But yes, I do believe water is a far more useful weapon. And maybe that's the pacifist in me. I believe it's a far more useful weapon than drones and missiles.
We are also friends with friends in Afghanistan. Friends in Afghanistan who don't like friends in Pakistan. Rajdeep, look at India's foreign policy, and I don't mean it in any other way. I only mean it, you know, you and I covered 26/11. You remember 26/11, 166 of us were massacred. 166 from so many countries.
Yes,
the
but
Air Force Chief said, let's strike them in POK.
No, one minute.
In POK,
we exposed each and every terrorist involved in that. That was the one time that Pakistan was forced to acknowledge their role in that terror sponsoring. They had to get the Hafiz Saids and the Zakiur Rahman Lakhvis to be prosecuted. And to my mind, therefore,
and
there
produce
are two
children. Produce children in jail. They were strategic restraint. Conjugal rights in jail.
No, but at the end of the day, Gaurav, if this operation, and let's look, if this Operation Sindoor as we see it today, and you know, sometimes in the present we don't know what the future will bring. If Operation Sindoor is able to actually rein in Pakistan's terror infrastructure and continue its support to these proxy jihadis, radical Islamists as you call them, full marks to Operation Sindoor if that happens. And I think we can judge that a year, 2 years down the line. If on the other hand, we continue to have every now and then we bleed because of terror, I think the jury will still be out as to what we achieved with Operation Sindoor. Certainly, after 2009, you'll recall there was a brief period where Pakistan itself stopped for a while sponsoring the kind of terror. We had a number of terror blasts in the first term of Manmohan Singh from 2004 to 9. In the second term, I got a sense that India had been able to diplomatically isolate and strangulate Pakistan. That's one approach to take.
German bakery, Zaveri Bazaar.
Yes, Gaurav, but what we have seen Pathankot, then we saw Uri, then we saw Pulwama, and now we've come to Pahalgam by Saran. Terrorism, according to me, will have to be solved only when the Pakistani army state in some form or the other is dismantled and becomes a normal state. Every country has an army. The army has a country called Pakistan. That is the truism. I still, even with this ceasefire, I want to see General Mir acknowledge publicly that this was accepted. All of these, of course, Gaurav and I can go on with this debate.
But
this
is
a democratic newsroom.
Will you permit me just one response?
30 seconds to you.
Okay.
All yours.
I only want to say Pakistan will not be a normal state. Pakistan is not a normal state. Imagine when an Oxbridge-educated Bilawal Bhutto Zardari speaks the language of Hafiz Saeed. It is not a normal state. Hafiz Muhammad Saeed was quoted as saying, "Tum hamara pani rokoge, hum tumhara khoon bahayenge." Exactly the same language. An Oxbridge-educated Bilawal Bhutto Zardari in that language, in that tone of his, he just spoke. What's the difference?
I am only saying, I believe in this particular instance, pragmatism forced two countries that were going up an escalatory spiral to pull back. If the Americans mediated to do it, so be it. I think both countries have lessons to learn. It's my view. I think India has lessons to learn, and we need a clearer end game in the future.
Yes.
The Pakistanis need to be clear that misadventurism of the kind that we saw in Pahalgam is unacceptable. So I think both countries, in my view, have lessons to learn from what has happened in the last few days. I want to go to Munish Pandey, who's joining me at the moment. Munish, late in the night, appreciate you joining us. What are you picking up from that MEA briefing? Is it clear that India still hopes, Umeed pe duniya kayam hai, is still hoping that the ceasefire will hold? What happened a couple of hours ago was only an aberration.
Well, Rajdeep, the sense is that Pakistan will come to sense and they will respect the ceasefire which was agreed between both the countries, Pakistan and India. But what we have seen since last evening is that not only at LOC, but also in Jammu and Kashmir, some parts of Rajasthan and some parts of Punjab, the situation has not changed what it was seen yesterday or day before yesterday. Only the activities were lessened. So there has been ceasefire violations at multiple places across the India-Pakistan border. But as far as MEA briefing is concerned, one thing was very clear, that army has been given a free hand to give a proper reply to what Pakistan is doing. And also India still expects Pakistan to respect the ceasefire agreement which was agreed between both the countries. And why, Rajdeep? Because there was a statement from Pakistan Prime Minister also. It was in front of the entire world, and within hours that, that agreement has been breached by Pakistan. So this is something which the Pakistan has to take responsibility. If there is something wrong between the government and the army that we are not aware of, but it's
Rajdeep, that's a very significant point that Munish is making.
The Pakistan...
Yes, is everybody in Pakistan on the same page? Is the army and the civil government on the same page? Are junior officers on the same page with General Asim Munir? Is General Asim Munir perhaps facing some problems within? These are many issues that there'll be more clarity in the days ahead. But before Rajdeep, we carry this conversation forward, let's listen into Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri.
For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control.
Okay, let's quickly bring in our colleague Amit Bharadwaj into this conversation, and our reporters are reporting from across the length and breadth of our country. In some instances, like you see in Munish's case, he's still not switching on the lights. Lights still remain off in some of the border areas. It's still lights out situation. Amit, where are you? Of course, it does appear you're in a situation, in a position where you're able to switch on your lights. How bad is the situation that you're able to pick up all along the LC and the IB right now, and the government response that army's been given a free hand to respond in case there are ceasefire violations?
Gaurav, things have changed in the Srinagar town in the past few hours. First, everybody in the town was pretty relaxed, and they were hoping to enjoy their evening because the past 72 hours has been really stressful for the people living on the line of control as well as those living in Srinagar city. But what we saw was first the sounds of explosion happened, and after that I personally recorded those visuals of anti-drone system being activated and dealing with these aerial objects. And after that, nearly for an hour or 2 hours rather, I would say now, by now, 90 minutes at least, there has been no aerial activity, because of which the blackout that was imposed in Srinagar has been removed now. The lights has been restored, and that is why you are able to see me in this particular state. But a few minutes back, it was entirely, completely blackout in Srinagar, and so in the areas of Baramulla, Uri sector. What we can also confirm our viewers is that the kind of visuals that we have heard and the testimonies that we have gotten from people living in the Baramulla town, they have heard similar loud explosions in their areas as well. Many of them suspect these were drone activities or the aerial activities which has been successfully dealt with. And if you connect with the very limited words that has been given out by the MEA today, Vikram Misri himself addressing the press conference this late, media briefing this late in the night, he has very clearly indicated that ceasefire violations have happened. It has happened despite the understanding that was made between India and Pakistan, and that our forces are adequately handling it. So in case of Srinagar, the kind of explosions that we heard this evening and the way anti-drone system got into the action mode, it was pretty clear that our forces have not settled down. They are completely alert to tackle with any situation that might unfold through the night, because everybody knows that despite the fact that there is an elected government in Pakistan, it's sort of a rogue nation. You cannot trust them, and you cannot believe that the elected establishment and the military establishment would be on the same page on any decision, whether it be the internal matters or external matters, or a matter where the international community is also involved. And that is what these fears have been proven right. And it's very fortunate that our forces, our air defense system, possibly was on best alert. And that is why whatever situation is unfolding, yes, is being taken care of. Back to you.
I want to go to Geeta Mohan at this stage. Geeta is our diplomatic editor, and she's been tracking this very closely. Geeta, what's the sense you got from the Foreign Secretary's statement? Is it just sending out a message to Pakistan, look, 3 hours ago you agreed to a ceasefire, please stick to it? Are we once again heading towards an escalatory ladder, or is it fair to say that the next 24 hours will tell us whether this ceasefire holds or not?
I think it's the latter, Rajdeep. The next 24 hours will be very, very critical. The ceasefire has not held. I had come after the briefing, the brief short statement, not a briefing, by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri earlier, where they'd announced that there's a mutual understanding, not a ceasefire, Rajdeep. We were told very clearly to say this is a mutual understanding between India and Pakistan to hold fire. And let's see whether if the two countries manage to hold fire. That was not to be. About 40 minutes later, I was in office and we had news coming of the ceasefire violations. And we're back here in the Ministry of External Affairs. Again, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri earlier, there was going to be a background briefing on the ongoing situation. But then it turned out to become an on the record by Foreign Secretary himself. So Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri came, again, gave a very brief statement and left. There was no background briefing by the officials. But what is important and significant over here is him coming and very clearly, this is a fog of war, Rajdeep, and you see so much of information coming. Was there a ceasefire violation? Was there not? Was there an attack? Wasn't there an attack? And in all that, the Indian government coming and accepting that, yes, there have been repeated violations of the so-called mutual understanding between India and Pakistan by Pakistan, and that the armed forces have been asked to give appropriate response. While they've also asked Pakistan to take appropriate steps to stop what's happening at the border. Now, on both counts, the fact
so they
that
have,
India
you see,
is
I think
appropriately.
that was the significant part, that they have given Pakistan a window. Unlike, you know, in before the ceasefire, before this mutual agreement was reached, the tone was far more belligerent. Here, you're giving Pakistan, telling Pakistan, look, we've signed a ceasefire agreement, you better adhere to it. We will respond appropriately, and we hope and expect you to adhere to it. So there is a sense that we are leaving that window of some hope that possibly in the next 24 hours, and we will, therefore, I think that tomorrow is far more important, where we will know whether Pakistan is abiding by this ceasefire. They will have no excuses if these violations continue same time tomorrow evening.
Well, which is why, Rajdeep, I said that the next 24 hours, which is the latter part of your question, was more important. The next 24 hours are going to be very important, but I'd say that tonight is going to also be very, very significant. Should the violations continue through the night, should there be an escalation from just arty firing to drones, then we are looking at a situation going back to look at the briefing. The sum of the briefing, you know, when they put that out, it said Operation Sindoor, special briefing on Operation Sindoor, which very clearly says that it's still an ongoing operation, that it hasn't ended. And why? Is because there have been violations of again, I'm saying it because, you know, officials over here asked us to call it not a ceasefire. It was not a ceasefire. It was a mutual understanding between India and Pakistan to hold fire. And that has not held. So
when is
tonight is going to be significant.
When is the DGMO meeting, Gaurav?
On the 12th. So it's usually, the DGMOs talk on phone every Tuesday. That's a standard operating procedure, and that is one CBM that's held.
So that's on Monday?
Tuesday. Usually it's every Tuesday they have a conversation.
Monday. Yeah.
So then this time they'll talk on Monday.
I think they're talking on Monday.
And every Tuesday they anyway have a conversation. At times additional DGMOs, at times DGMOs. And you know, when that conversation was put, where are India and Pakistan talking, the DGMOs always remain in conversation, and that's the best CBM in a way that military to military, then there is no confusion.
Okay.
You know, Rajdeep, that is a very significant point. Of course, often it leads to a situation that while ceasefire violations are happening, Pakistan is sending in terrorists. Then I've been told by some former DGMOs, when they were DGMOs, that Pakistan would be given a stern warning. Military to military, then they do something at times. So that CBM is always a good thing to have.
Either way, I think we've had a evening where there's been lots of developments that have taken place, rapid switches and turns and twists and turns. Our correspondents will carry on with Gaurav, and he will take you right through this night. If there are any more ceasefire violations, you know that Gaurav will be the first to know about them, and he will report them. As of now, the hope is that the next 24 hours will tell us whether India and Pakistan have come to a mutual agreement. We can only hope. And I can only hope as a pacifist, and I claim I am fully committed to the whole notion of pacifism, that the two countries see what Donald Trump said, not me, common sense. And common sense dictates that you don't fight 21st century wars with neighbors with drones and missiles unless you want to get your economy back down a tube. And Pakistan's economy has been down a tube. And if India wants to move on this path, that it is compete with global economies, have a place on the high table, be the leader of the global south, be part of G20. And I think India too needs to be very focused on how it's going to deal with terror on one side, but not allow that to confuse it when it comes to its other strategic objectives and, more importantly, its geo-economic objectives. I'm going to leave it at that. I've given enough gyan.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm a pacifist like you.
Gaurav, you're a pacifist?
Absolutely.
Gaurav
but I believe
Gaurav seems to, much like I on election day get all excited. Gaurav seems to get excited by the prospect of having war games in a TV studio.
Not really.
He's a Noida, Lashkar-e-Noida.
Which is so not true, Rajdeep,
Okay,
because
good.
I have reported from ground zero where most people don't dare to go, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine war or Israel-Hamas war or the Kargil war. But that's not the point, including 26/11 standing right outside Taj when Kasab and his buddies were lobbing grenades outside. But that's not the point. My point is, we have to go by our Sanatan philosophy, which is Shakti se Shanti. You know, as Ramdhari Singh Dinkar very clearly said, that only the brave are respected. If you're weak, you know, you turn the other cheek, then he'll keep, you know, slapping you on every cheek. So pacifism should not mean weakness. And
Point
that is
taken.
where, you know, problems arise. Shakti se Shanti, and we should never suffer the Prithviraj Chauhan syndrome that you forgive a Muhammad Gauri and he'll come back the next year and then give you grief.
We'll have another debate on this. But my thoughts and prayers today, and I say this really with all sincerity, is with the people of the border villages of this country. Please think about them. There was a lot of anger and rage after, and legitimately so, after what happened in Pahalgam, Baisaran. Completely unacceptable, the killing of innocents. But there are people living on the border villages who've suffered, often anonymous villagers in places like Poonch. And we haven't perhaps said enough about them.
True.
Their courage is not easy.
True.
To live in these border villages. They infrastructurally do not have the same benefits as the big metros. It's been hellish for them over the last few days. And that's the madness I spoke about. You can't have these villages suffering in the way they have. My thoughts are with all those innocent civilians. If Pakistan believes that that's the way they want to prosecute war, then we have to reply in kind. We cannot allow innocents, whether through terror or artillery shelling, to suffer. That's what I believe pacifism is about. Ensuring that innocent civilians are not subject to the gun, be it that of the terrorist or that of an army. But that's enough that I've said for today. As I said, my thoughts and prayers will always be with those who suffer because of violence. Gaurav will take over from here. Let's listen in once again to the Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri.
But wonderful discussion, Rajdeep.
For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control.
So the Foreign Secretary making it very clear that the armed forces have a free hand. In case there's a ceasefire violation by Pakistan, it should be responded to. The latest situation on ground right now, and remember, we have our reporters on ground and we report from ground zero, irrespective of what people may think. But I want to quickly cut across to Munish Pandey, who joins us on the show. Also with us is Amit Bharadwaj. Munish, you're still in a location where you cannot switch on your lights. There's still a blackout. You know, while people may hope that Pakistan may reform or maybe turn a new leaf, but clearly Pakistan is way too down. It's almost like a drug addict. It's addicted to terror. Even if it wants to reform, its army won't permit it. Munish, what's the situation right now?
Well, Gaurav, as far as Punjab and Rajasthan is concerned, most of the areas are still in blackout. And why? Because at least in Punjab, there were big cities like Gurdaspur, Pathankot, Hoshiarpur, Jalandhar and Faridkot. In all these areas, drones were sighted. And those drones have been neutralized by the Indian Armed Forces. The similar thing happened in Rajasthan also. So there was hope. Let me tell you, Gaurav, this evening around 7 o'clock, I was in Amritsar and I went to the market, and people were really happy because after many days they came out of their home, the shops were open, they wanted to walk around the streets and all. So they were really happy that at least this ceasefire has happened. But when I spoke to most of those gentlemen, they told me that, Pakistan is a country which can't be believed. We have those bites on record also, Gaurav, and this is exactly what happened. Pakistan is a country which can't be believed, and within hours of agreeing to a ceasefire, Pakistan violated those ceasefire, and there have been multiple air violations as far as this part of country is concerned, and that is why we are seeing blackout happening in most of the parts of the Punjab and Rajasthan. And as far as the administration is concerned, at some places like in Amritsar, there has been no drone sighting, but as a precautionary measure, because Amritsar is a very sensitive area. Pakistan has tried sending armed drones with 10 kgs of explosives, towards the Kant areas. So it is a very sensitive area. That is why precautionary, the Amritsar is still in blackout, but in most of the areas, drones have been sighted, and the administration still believes that the situation will get better. But again, they are not ready to believe that Pakistan will respect any agreement as far as ceasefire violation is concerned.
I agree with all those people. I mean, Munish, I completely agree with you. I mean, I personally, and I've covered Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror for 3 decades. Clearly, you cannot trust Pakistan. And I also want, to bring Amit Bharadwaj into this conversation. Amit, in Srinagar, people are rejoicing, but in the back of their heads, is there an apprehension that Pakistan could do more? Because Pakistan has done so much to hurt the economy of Jammu and Kashmir, and that, God forbid, it could do that again, Amit.
Gaurav, apprehensions have been proven right. All through the evening when the ceasefire was announced and the formal announcement was made by the both sides, Pakistan and India, people, whether it be in Baramulla, Kupwara, or even in Srinagar, they were very skeptical about Pakistan, and they do not trust what the political establishment is saying until unless the statement also comes from the military establishment. And they were happy, rejoicing the fact that things might get back to normal. And moreover, I met a couple of people who belong from the business community as well as the entrepreneur class, which is a very vibrant class, by the way, not only in Srinagar but also in up towards Baramulla town as well. And they were hoping that once the Amarnath Yatra begins, the economy might come back on the track. But again, the bigger question was for tonight, in their minds, whether Pakistan will stick to the ceasefire or whether there will be again RT firings, shellings, as well as drone attacks, attempts as it has been made by Pakistan in the past 72 hours. And exactly
very clearly,
that has happened. We know why we don't trust Pakistan and why people out here don't trust Pakistan.
That's a far more pragmatic approach, and especially people and their families who've bled at the hands of Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining me. Before I slip into a break, I want our viewers also to know the success India had. Muridke and Bahawalpur and Pakistan's Punjab province. Ever since we've suffered at the hands of Pakistani terror, these were considered out of bounds, that you could never target Pakistan in its Punjab province. What has happened in this strike is that theory is no longer valid. India has not only struck terror at source, India has also struck the terror sponsors at source. In Rawalpindi, in Lahore, in Bahawalpur, and all the way from Skardu to Rahim Yar Khan. Now, in that strike at Bahawalpur and at Muridke, this distinction between state actors and non-state actors, it's gone forever. Because when a terrorist died, you had Pakistan Army's corps commanders and division commanders and brigade commanders and their special forces and their soldiers and officers giving a guard of honor to terrorists who'd been killed. And UN designated global terrorists were either a part of it, leading the namaz there, or actually some of them were in that coffin that was then put 6 feet under. But that's just one part of the story. The second part of the story is this Choli Daman Ka Saath, the blood brothers that terrorists and Pakistan army personnel are. I'm not saying this. Watch the images that I'm about to show you. Take a look at this rogues gallery of terrorists who've been eliminated. This is an India Today exclusive.
A 25-minute multi-domain assault on 9 terror camps in Pakistan and POK. Terror hotbeds reduced to rubble. Most wanted terrorists and terror pads destroyed by Indian forces in a precise strike. Exclusive information accessed by India Today reveals the elimination of over 100 terrorists on May 7. Among those killed in Operation Sindoor were 5 top operatives from Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed involved in planning and executing attacks against India. Sources say Indian forces neutralized Mudassar Khadian Khas, also known as Abu Jundal, an LET terrorist who was in charge of Markaz Taiba in Muridke. Jundal received a guard of honor at his funeral from Pakistan Army. Among the attendees were a serving Lieutenant General and IG of Punjab Police. The prayer was led by US designated Lashkar terrorist Hafiz Abdul Rauf. Another key target eliminated was Jaish-e-Mohammed's Hafiz Muhammad Jamil, the eldest brother-in-law of Masood Azhar. Jamil was in charge of Markaz Subhanallah in Bahawalpur. He was involved in radical indoctrination and fundraising for JEM. Also killed was Muhammad Yusuf Azhar, known by several aliases including Ustad Ji and Muhammad Salim. A Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist, Yusuf Azhar was brother-in-law of Masood Azhar. He was the weapons trainer for JEM. He was also suspect in the Kandahar IC-814 hijacking and linked to multiple terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Another top Lashkar operative, Khalid, alias Abu Aksha, was also confirmed dead. He had orchestrated multiple terror strikes in Jammu and Kashmir. Khalid was involved in weapons smuggling from Afghanistan. The fifth high-value target was Muhammad Hassan Khan, a next-generation Jaish leader. He was a son of Mufti Asghar Khan Kashmiri, an operational commander of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Hassan Khan coordinated terror operations in Jammu and Kashmir. Operation Sindoor was not just retaliatory but a show of India's resolve and capability in dismantling terror infrastructure. The operation followed the April 22nd terror attack in Pahalgam that left 26 dead. Bureau Report, India Today.